And then the next step will be to start learning to use all of these thrusters in concert. Is a training technique that we use called tethering. So if you see on my screen, what I'm doing is coming up to a vertex on the spine of the station. I'm bringing it to a fixed spot in front of me. I've also got my ship lights on. That's quite useful because you can use them as a gauge. It's sort of quite bright here, but we'll get to sort of a point in the shade where they're more noticeable. But you can use the ship lights to gauge how far away from an object you are. Because they get brighter as you get closer to it, then you can tell when you're about to hit it. But what I've done is come to a fixed point on the station spine.
Just hit me, but it's fine.
That's alright, that'll hit you a few times. So yeah, now I'm in the shade. I'll do is go closer. You can see the difference that it makes. Oh, it's still not that much difference, but
Let me try and get away from the fact that the station is quite hitting me here. Let me try and do it in flight assist off. Because if I take the easy way out, oh crap, I'm never gonna learn.
I mean, it's really hard to do this sort of thing in flight assist on as well. It's actually a lot easier to do it in flight assist off, because once you set yourself up, if you can see my inputs on screen, I'm really applying very minimal input. If you look at the star field in the background, the station's moving quite significantly, but when I come into a fixed point on it, you can see the station looks stationary whilst the stars are moving, whilst I'm not really applying very much input at all whatsoever, because what I'm doing is I've applied rotational thrust, and then I don't have to touch that again. I keep on rotating at that speed to match the station speed.
My main issue is that I think I have to apply constant. Oh, I did hit the station there. That was cheap. I'm gonna hit it now because I hear off my alarms.
And then afterwards, because all I'm doing is following the rotation of the station, I'm just using very small light touches of the of my directional thrusters, just that I can match centripetal force to keep myself at a relatively fixed position on the station. But that's mostly going to be slightly thruster, primary thruster to bring me in, and then vertical thruster to keep me at sort of a fixed rotational point, and then small little adjustments just to correct what I've been doing.
I'm doing it.
Let me have a look at your screen.
Though I am very confused.
Yeah, it looks like the station's sort of moving away from you. So if you try and pick a fixed point and match to it. But yeah, that looks like you're bringing yourself in now.
Yeah, I can see that. The station's getting bigger. Let me try and move with the station instead of against it, maybe.
Yeah, that would be easier. And the reason that I'm doing it in this particular direction, where the rotation of the station is along my vertical thrusters, is because on almost all ships the vertical thrusters are much more powerful than the lateral thrusters. So it's much easier to do this sort of thing by bringing the rotational movement in line with vertical thrust than it is to try and bring it in line with your lateral thrust.
Well, hello.
Yep, that looks like you're doing it.
Okay. Yay!
And then it's just a question of distance and positioning and how close you want to get and how far you want to get. So one of the advantages of the spot we've come to here is that it's a very small rotational point. So the speed with which you have to move to match the rotation is very low. Whereas if you come to a further out point, for example one of these cargo containers here.
Oh yeah, that would be a bit more difficult, I would assume.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think it's any more difficult per se, but because it requires more speed, it also requires more forethought as to how you want to get to that rotational speed in the first place. But I mean, you can see that once you're in place, it requires just about the same amount of small adjustments to keep yourself rotating at that point.